Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome to Blockchain Banter. I'm Jen. I'll be your host. I am here with 21 from Pawchain. Thank you so much for being with us again. And Dr. Mark Richardson from Bancor and Carbon DeFi. Mark, thank you for joining. I'm going to have you guys, I know that you were both on with me last week, but for anyone who didn't join us and missed our discussion, first of all, you should probably go back and watch the recording because it was a great discussion that we had last week. The topic was, does decentralization even matter anymore? Kind of touched on a few different topics. This week, we're going to be talking about what crypto's biggest problem is. Before we jump in, though, I'm going to ask you guys to briefly introduce yourselves for anyone who may not be familiar and may not have caught our episode last week. 21, can I start with you?
Sure. My name is 21. I've been in DeFi for, as we covered, I think since 2016, 17. That was when I first briefly got into it. Came from traditional trading, stocks, all that good stuff. I found my way through, I believe it was Robinhood and eToro app. So basically, just got on there to kind of trade some stocks one day and merge into the blue chips, Ethereum, Bitcoin. Same as everyone else, did the earn and learns, learned a little bit of stuff here and there. Discovered crypto Twitter, got into DeFi, I roughly say around 2021, or around the just ship time and the ship area during that bull run there. Won an NFT, introduced me to MetaMask and DeFi, and I was kind of hooked after that. So here I am now. I'm a proud member of the Pawchain Genesis team. I've been here for about 2 years, and also do marketing and growth as well. And I'm very, very happy. Love the DeFi, love the connection of people, and love the future of blockchain. That's really what's kept me around. Came for the money, paid for
Awesome.
the people, and for Web3. So it's really, really cool.
The tech got you.
Yeah, it, did. It definitely did. It definitely did. And here
Crypto
I am,
Twitter and the technology, it got
man.
you.
And here I am, full time, Web3 and Twitter. But I absolutely love it though. I see the future of it, and I'm very bullish on blockchain as a whole. Definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us. Mark, I'm
Thank
going to
you for
pass
having
it over to you if you would introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, certainly. My name is Mark Richardson. I was a organic synthetic chemist once upon a time. I moved into blockchain in 2021. I'm currently the project lead at Bancor. Bancor is a very old DeFi project now. I think it was like the second application on Ethereum after Gnosis, or thereabouts. And introduced something called the automatic market maker, which is a sort of foundational technology for DeFi on pretty much every blockchain now.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so I mentioned, you guys, that our topic this week is what is crypto's biggest problem? And in my announcement, I had actually linked out to the DeFi investor, a tweet that he had that actually inspired this call. I'm going to share my screen. Here is his post. They claim that crypto's biggest problem, way too much funding is allocated to infrastructure projects instead of consumer dApps. We need more killer apps that are fun and useful, not more L1s and L2s. So I think there's a couple different ways that we can kind of unpack this. One, I want to know if you guys disagree or agree with this. And if you disagree, if you can even pinpoint what you think crypto's single biggest problem is, what it is that you think. 21, do you agree or disagree with this?
It's kind of in the middle, but I'm going to say I agree. But there's a logic for it. It's not at first glance. It's definitely. I think what they're trying to say is something a little deeper than what it appears at first glance. Definitely. So I think that what they're saying is basically we have a lot of sorry, I was going to stop there, but we have a lot of L1s, L2s, things coming out of that nature, right? But we don't have any simplicity. We don't have any way for a new user to just simply use crypto, right, and make it a joyful experience. They have to come, they have to do their own research, they have to research wallets, chains, contracts, how to import bridges. A lot of jargon that has taken us years to digest, right? Crypto is not digestible at the moment, and I think that's maybe what they're reaching for, is to make it digestible for users, and not so much everything's an L1, L2. Like the deep side of crypto Twitter, the degen side, and that there's no middle ground. It's either hype, 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 and memes, or it's L1s, L2s, L3s, and I think that's what they're trying to say. So I have to kind of I have to agree with it for a little bit. We definitely have to include that user experience and user interface. That's where I'm going with it. And I think we need to kind of focus on that again to give it an endpoint to where all this cool stuff on the back end has to have a place to see the light, right? It has to come to the people. The people, everyday user needs a way to interact with all this great tech, the L1s, the L2s, the L3s. I'm very bullish on those, but we have to give the end user a user experience and a user interface that'll allow them to easily and I'm going to say funnily for lack of a better word, but easily interact with these great protocols that we're building on the back end. And I think that's where we're kind of lacking. So maybe to allocate a little bit of funding on the middle ground, and kind of making it digestible would be absolutely bullish in my opinion. And I think that's where I'm probably at with it. Kind of torn,
So
kind of torn between the two, but I do see the justification. I do see the point if that's the end goal. And like I said, I could be reading too far into it, but that's my takeaway, and that's what I feel like they're reaching for. Is what they're really trying to say.
yeah, Mark, do you agree with what 21 is saying, or what are your thoughts on this tweet? Do you agree with the original? I still say tweet. Do you agree with the original post?
I don't agree with the original post.
Okay.
I think, but I also don't take issue with anything that 21 just said. So let's break down this post for a second, because it starts by saying too much funding is allocated towards infrastructure, and then says what we need is more killer apps, not more L1s and L2s. I think that the person who wrote this may have miscategorized their frustration. I am what I'm hearing in this tweet is that they are sick of, let's say, needless redundancy. There are an enormous number of layer one and layer two blockchains, which are, for all intents and purposes, identical, right? I'd like to more today than several years ago. So I think years ago when we had blockchains um, like IOTA and EOS and Tezos, like these were all competing paradigms, and it was unclear which which of those paradigms was going to be superior. And today, it's not even that there are competing paradigms anymore, because most of these chains are, either aligning themselves with something like the Cosmos SDK, or they are completely, Ethereum virtual machine compatible. And this includes the layer twos that are built even on top of Bitcoin, right? Most of them are, EVM abstractions. And so I think, if we were to read between the lines, what the DeFi investor is complaining about is that there's an enormous amount of money being pumped into clones of services we already have, right? Infrastructure that doesn't need to be remade because it's an exact replica of infrastructure that already exists. And I think that that kind of spending is poorly informed. And so in that sense, this is teasing apart what I think this tweet is talking about. I do agree with it, but I don't agree that there's too much funding allocated to infrastructure. I think it's important to recognize, for example, that infrastructure development costs a huge amount, right? Like we're talking about, foundational theory that kind of sets the new paradigm in motion. Things like zero knowledge proofs, right, require PhD level, cryptographers to actually, work on these things. And the code bases that go into supporting it, the implementation requires experts in embedded systems and cryptography and other things. And it's expensive. Like it's very, very expensive. Even to audit it is extremely expensive. So infrastructure, you have to think about it in a city context. The city will commit, billions, if not, hundreds of billions of dollars into building out things like rail and roads and, the copper network and fiber optic and all of those kinds of things. And that stuff needs to be in place so that businesses can be built, using that infrastructure. And so when he says that what we need are more killer apps and fun, useful stuff, that is actually relatively cheap. It doesn't require an enormous amount of funding to get that kind of stuff up and off the ground. Think of things like Waddle, is a game that was bought by the New York Times, but was originally just released to the internet for free, which for those who don't know is just like a guessing game where you have to guess a 5-letter English word once a day. It became immensely popular, and that's, to the point of this tweet, is a fun application built on top of the internet. But it cost a lot more to develop the internet than it did to develop Wordle, right? You just don't need the same kind of capital to build applications that you do to build the infrastructure that supports them. So I
Maybe
agree
not
with
to
this tweet.
build, but to maintain, not as much
Maintaining
as infrastructure, right? But you still have to have some sort of, something allocated towards this longevity. I mean, you don't want to just deploy it and walk away. And in order to maintain something, whether it's an infrastructure project or if it's this fun and useful, killer app, it still has a cost to it, right? And
Yeah,
so
sure. And
go ahead.
these things aren't always separate. Like I consider what I do for at Bancor and what Bancor is doing to be a part of the infrastructure. And I mean that in the sense that it's developing novel theory, and new paradigms in smart contract organization and architecture and things. And this needs a careful touch. It's extremely difficult to research and implement. And again, it's very expensive to audit. But once it's there are all kinds of things that you can build on top of that infrastructure. So one of the things that I point out regularly is, for example, token launchpads like Pawchain don't there's nothing that those applications have or can do that you can't do with the infrastructure that Bancor has already brought to market. It's just a new interface on top of existing smart contract infrastructure. And so to build a token launchpad using Bancor's contracts is extremely cheap, right? You probably need, like, one person can do it. I've got a friend of mine who, with little more than a $30 a month subscription to ChatGPT, has put together entire applications and websites with very little or no coding background. So yeah, you don't need millions of dollars of investment into the application layer because it is very capital efficient to build those things. But the infrastructure that those things rely on was extremely difficult and expensive to build in the first place. And as Jen has pointed out, it can also be extremely expensive to maintain. So yeah, I think that this is a misdirected criticism. I think that the overinvestment in competing L1s and L2s is because people are trying to, get the same advantage that early investors into, for example, Avalanche had, right? Or BNB or something, right? They don't actually care about infrastructure. They're not really investing in infrastructure. What they're actually doing is they're investing in a token generation. They're investing in a token generation event. And historically, tokens associated with or being used as the gas token on its own specific chain have performed rather well. And so looking to the past, if you were a venture capitalist, supporting a new blockchain doesn't really matter what it's doing, might be worth the gamble because the token that it eventually launches, and with the unlock schedule or vesting schedule that you have as one of this, as having participated in the seed round, is probably going to net you an extremely healthy profit. And that's the number one problem with cryptocurrency, is that very, very few people actually care or know about the capabilities of the technology or are interested in using it for anything. By and large, cryptocurrency is seen by investors as a kind of Ponzi scheme. And like any Ponzi scheme, getting in early is really the only thing that matters. And that's why we see so many L1s and L2s and redundant infrastructure and millions of coins that we don't necessarily need or don't represent any kind of paradigm shifting component of the technology that we all believe in. And I think that's it. It's the investment component of cryptocurrency that kind of ruins it.
21, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's very, very great points. Very great points, Mark. And we have to remember too, we have these cool dApps and these cool apps or whatnot, but that'll only lead you so far. you know, you've got a lot of compartmented chains, compartmented liquidity, compartmented I'm sorry, not compartmented, fragmented, very compartmentalized. These dApps are only going to lead you so far. So yes, I do absolutely agree. We do need to keep working on the infrastructure to make interoperability a thing. Because right now, for you to be interoperable in the crypto space, it's going to cost you money, put you at risk, and just going to be a really big headache, you know, with your traditional bridging and things like that. So I do agree with that very much. So the maintenance is important. The continued R&D to be able to work together on the back end, connect blockchains, make it easier. You know, you have a prime example is just whenever you use a CEX, you know, it's you don't see anything on the back end. It's that interoperability. No matter what chain you're on, you never know that you're leaving chain. You can go from Bitcoin to Ethereum to Polygon to Solana, whatever you want to do, and the user never knows it, you know, because they focus on the front end and the back end as well. They didn't drop one for the other. So I do think that's a very, 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 very great point. We're going to have to continue to progress on the back end to make things interoperable to where it'll actually come forth for the users to make it easier and fun again for them in the end. You know what I mean? Because right now, it's just not fun with having to digest everything you have to digest in this crypto space whenever you get into it. It's fun for us because, you know, we're degens, but you know, or we're tech enthusiasts, whatever the case may be. It's our bread and butter.
I
But you
always
know,
call myself a nerd. I won't call you guys nerds, but I call myself a nerd.
no,
I got in
no,
it for the tech.
I
You know
wear
what I
that. I
mean?
wear that
Like
title
I'm the
proudly.
meme. I'm in it for the tech.
I wear that title proudly. But yeah. There's
Yeah.
definitely, if you're not here for the tech, as you know, very passionate about it as well. It's kind of hard to hold on to because, as we know, the space moves very fast. What's applicable now might not be applicable in 6 months, and then your tech's dead. So then you have to find. But as long as you're open to new sources and learning new things, I really think it's a cool space to be in, for sure.
So do you guys, okay, we're talking about how we actually need more of, you know, the people that care about the technology and what they can build using the technology. But that's kind of, I won't say it's opposite of like the killer apps that are fun and useful, because obviously these can be built using what it is that we have, right? Especially as we continue to grow and create new things. But if we focus too hard on the infrastructure and the technology, are we going to discourage those from building these killer apps that we would want to, you know, be fun? And I mean, I won't say they're not useful, right? Like Mark, you had mentioned the AMM, right? Like it's extremely useful, you know. Would I consider it fun? I'm not sure. Maybe they mean gaming. Maybe it's the gaming aspect. Maybe it's something along those lines. But do you think by focusing too hard on one, we're almost alienating or eliminating the other from the equation?
Well, I don't think that we shouldn't conflate focus and funding. You know, like people can focus on things without spending a lot of money, and people can spend a lot of money without focusing on anything. So I do think it would be worthwhile for developers, not just within the the blockchain universe, but even outside of it, to begin thinking about what a blockchain can give them that they're that they're not getting from like Web2, AWS or anything else. Like there is an infinite amount of things that can be done with blockchains. And we've only explored a very small area, mostly DeFi centric. But yeah, that focus doesn't have to be signaled with enormous amounts of funding. I'm not even sure enormous amounts of funding are going to would even help that problem. What you need is people with enough vision and creativity to see the potential that blockchains represent. And you don't necessarily, you can't conjure that kind of creativity into existence by throwing money at it. It requires a mind share. I think blockchains have still, they've come a long way since the time that I've been in the space, in terms of becoming recognized as a legitimate technology with interesting use cases. But we're not quite there. But yeah, the same way that people don't, complain that the internet had too much funding, I don't think that we should, say that funding
There's
being
too much
directed
money
towards
coming in.
something.
It needs to be going somewhere else. Okay, let
Yep.
me shift this then for a second. 21, were you going to say something before
No, it was a great example, and I really agree. Like you know, when the internet came, we didn't hear about the internet for 30 years because it was being applied applicable. It was being applied to the workplace. You heard about it in your workplace. You were sending faxes, you were sending emails, you were sending some type of new transmission for work, right? But you weren't using the internet at home a whole lot. You might get some disc in the mail. And then the .com boom happened. That's when the monetary side of the internet came. You know, people weren't making transactions, even though we had debit cards, right? Remember that in the 80s, you had the internet was around since the 50s and 60s, but we didn't focus on the monetary side of it until late 90s, early 2000s. The applications were growing, the data side, it was becoming applicable. People were learning to use it. And then it just kind of organically boomed into what it did. And now we have everything we have now. We're talking about the development of Web3 now. So yeah, I really feel that that was a really, really great point. If we could get the focus back on the data side and the application side, it would not even. I'm not talking about that, but just the data applications of it all, the unpolished gem of it. I really feel like is the most bullish thing of blockchain, and we've only begun to scratch that surface. You know, we have DMVs adopting Avalanche, things like that. It's starting to happen. You know, people are wising up, and I really feel like it's going to catch on.
Do you think we get impatient? You mentioned with the internet, you know, it happened so organically. Do you feel like sometimes we're so like
Sometimes I feel like we went
so
backwards
deep
with
in
blockchain.
the space that we are like we're impatient. We want it to happen now, and we're not letting ourselves actually let it run its course organically. Or how do you feel about our industry in that
A
sense?
lot of the times, yes, I feel like we went about it backwards with the monetary approach for mass adoption. We should have been doing things like data application, supply and logistics, medical records, chain of commands, anything you want to keep a chain on. You know, we do it every day with scanners. We type in contract addies, we send the command, and we receive an information packet back.
Yeah.
That's almost rivaling SQL, which is a very very imperative component of everyday computing. That's to me. I mean, I know I might be going out on a limb here, but I see it. You know, I see the relevance, and I see the similarities and the familiarity of it. You know, and I really feel like we're on to something really special with the data side of it, the data application. So whenever it becomes a thing, I'm really bullish on it. But yeah, I feel like we did at the end of the day. Maybe not that we started, but not that we went backwards. Even maybe we just applied too much focus on the monetary side. You know, with mass adoption being able to go buy a computer or a pizza with my credit.
Yeah.
To me, that's not
Right.
mass adoption. That's not mass adoption at all. That's a monetary side. That's very small. The scientific, the data, the moving, the most valuable real estate is digital. We can move that like no other. That's a selling point for me. You know.
Now, let me ask you guys another question. One of the comments was scams. Someone commented that they think scams is crypto's biggest problem. Where do you guys see this kind of thinking? And one of the replies was it was more of a UX problem. What are your thoughts on scams and where they rank in the biggest problem, one through however many we see?
I mean, scams are obviously a problem, but it's not crypto specific. You know,
Mhm.
the overwhelming majority of the interactions that I have with people on my telephone, like that actually call my number, are scammers.
I don't even check
They're
my text messages anymore. They're
Thank
all
you, thank
scammers.
you, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. Man, I'm
I,
glad
I
it's
don't
not
even
me.
I don't even know why I have a telephone number anymore. It feels like the only purpose it serves is for scammers to contact me. Um, it's the same with emails. Like 99% of the emails I get are maybe not scams, but certainly spam. Um,
I'm certainly not
and
clicking anything within those emails.
There you go.
sure,
Whether it's scam or spam or whatever it happens to be, I'm not clicking anything.
I think that the because of the financial nature of cryptocurrency and the applications built on top of blockchains, it can feel more scam centric because the methods that scammers can use to extract value from you are a little bit more direct. Whereas people calling me on the phone are going to try and convince me to buy like Amazon gift cards and send them to them in the post or whatever whatever the new methods are. I don't really know. And so yeah, because of the attractiveness of blockchains for scamming, certainly that's that it feels more present. But I assure you, it's not. Scams penetrate literally every single thing that society has ever done. It's to say that that's blockchain's number one problem, I think, is sort of sweeping under the rug that it's civilization's number one problem. But yeah, while I agree it would be better to not have scams, that's just wish thinking. There's always going to be scams. Anytime there is, someone that is like a criminal who's looking to extract value from someone else, they can invent a scam to do it. We'll never be rid of it ever. Even as the postal service was originally sort of riddled with scams, like the idea of the chain letter, and the what has become multi-level marketing, that some of these original pyramid schemes were actually operated exclusively via the post. So yeah, they're everywhere. It's you can pretend like this is the thing that's holding cryptocurrency and blockchains back, but everything else has managed to progress even with that, that shackle around their ankles. The internet has done just fine, for example, and that was once, the scammer's haven. They've just moved on to the next technological paradigm.
Maybe it seems like it's a little bit worse or more has more of a presence here because this is a new technology for some. And so having their own wallet and having their own keys and having that much responsibility. And I'm not saying we have less, when we have a credit card or a debit card. I know I tap. I don't, have the chip reader anymore because I know that there are scams where they can go and they can read my chip. We know how to avoid a lot of these scams that have been present in different areas for so long. Like you were saying, Mark, I mean, they're everywhere, right? But maybe it's just the fact that it's unfamiliar to a lot of people who are just getting into blockchain and on-chain in general. They're not quite sure how to interact just yet to be sure that they can keep themselves safe and avoid those specific scams that are so new to them.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a quick scroll here, and I want to see increasing.
Also, we have to remember too that crypto kind of resonated and fostered that environment with the whole "trust me, bro" and the not coming out behind your PFP, not being doxxed. Being doxxed is a very, very new thing, and it's not it doesn't sit well with everyone. It's probably half and half split from what I've seen, but it did kind of foster that whole it was very easy for project founders and for projects to make a pump and dump. I mean, look at what's happening on Solana now. It's insane. It's wild. So we do kind of foster it with the whole "trust me, bro" and letting that be acceptable in the standard. Because I still see very prominent figures that refuse to reveal themselves and they walk around behind masks, and it's like, I mean, it's just wild to me. To me, that's not blue chip conversation, and that's definitely not mass adoption conversation.
I want to talk about this one. I've got a dog barking, you guys. I'm so sorry. But they're saying that it's not the funding necessarily. It's that there's no innovative and useful consumer apps. So let me hear your thoughts on that.
It's one of the things I think I was pointing to earlier in the conversation. The problem isn't money. It's creativity. Without pointing any fingers, because I really don't like to use other projects as an example.
Yeah, let's
but
not.
I think
But
so I'm not going to do that. But I'm not criticizing Uniswap here, by the way. So Uniswap v4 recently just launched, and it has some new that's a good example of like infrastructure, right? Uniswap v4 is an infrastructure project. It's taken the Uniswap v3 underlying contract architecture and then simplified it a little way, made it a little bit more efficient in terms of gas expenditure by using what they call singleton contracts. And then also introduced this idea of hooks, right? Which is in traditional programming, you would refer to them as callback functions, but it basically just means that during a swap, you can add sort of more features, like things that are going to happen either before a swap is processed or after a swap is processed, that kind of thing. And then Uniswap says, okay, this is the technology we're giving you. Do with it what you will. And all of the projects that I've seen recently that are advertising the fact that they're building their AMM on top of Uniswap v4 is literally identical to products that people have had on Ethereum for years. Like they're not only are they not using Uniswap v4 to its full capacity, but they're not even using the Uniswap v3 to its full capacity. They're just rewrapping things that have already existed for years, putting it under a new brand banner, and then of course they'll launch a token. It's exactly the same problem. So and I think that's why we don't see more funding put into stuff, because most most people that are in the investment space, especially if they're talking significant amounts of capital and enough to fund infrastructure projects, if you come to them with a pitch that says, hey, we're going to rebuild this this product that's existed for 4.5 years, but this time it's on top of Uniswap v4, they're going to give you a cent, right? And that's the problem, is that having a good idea for an app is rare. It's not expensive, but it's rare. And so I think that's what this guy is saying. It's not that funding is allocated there, it's that there's no innovation and useful consumer apps to allocate to. 100%.
Do you think that our industry, it's often said that we need more educational materials out there, that we don't have enough of our actual users that understand the technology, or are able to really do their own research and things of that sort. Like sometimes I feel like we're back in DeFi summer 2020 liquidity mining days, and this is still the mentality. Do you think if those innovative consumer dApps or apps were really to come about, that the majority of the industry would be able to recognize them for their actual worth? Do you think maybe this might be a deterrent from that sort of? Do you think there really just is a lack of general creativity?
I think it's twofold. There is a general lack of creativity, as evidenced by the enormous number of of redundant applications, right? Products that do exactly the same thing as other products. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. I can switch over to Rick's comment here.
Sorry, you brought up liquidity mining and stuff. So I said that, okay, there's a problem definitely with creativity. The other problem is actually the consumers themselves. I mean that, not to, I feel like sometimes, people think that that's an overly cynical perspective. But
well,
what I mean
that's what
is,
I'm asking. Yeah.
What I mean is that in general, if you had to sort of categorize the motive for people to adopt blockchains over the last few years, it is to what they thought they found is the ability to somehow do nothing and be made rich, right? Like that was really the draw. There were airdrops, rewards programs, liquidity mining, you name it, where so long as you knew how to operate MetaMask and you had some money to throw into an exchange and transfer it into your wallet, then you could actually do this. And that was the thing that made blockchains and DeFi so popular. But no one who was participating in liquidity mining or these airdrop programs and things, I think, were legitimately interested in what the product actually does. They were only interested in the token reward schedule or whatever was following it. And so this has created a toxic paradigm where in its urgency, the blockchain industry did its best to attract as many users as quickly as possible by offering them, quote unquote, free money. And what that has meant is that we now have a captive audience of people that exclusively expect that. And so the people that we have, like all of these, hundreds of thousands or millions of wallets on each blockchain, all belong to people that don't really care about the products that are being developed, and they don't necessarily want to use those products, but are instead mostly interested in being rewarded for using those products by, direct disbursements from the project that created them. And so we have a very bad, market profile between products that are being developed to serve an explicit use case and the lack of people to actually use those products. And that's, we have only ourselves to blame for that.
I was just going to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our fault.
Our fault.
Like we invited the frat boys in and then wondered why, no one's taking the space seriously. And so, yeah, the kind of organic adoption where people are actually using products for their own, for its own sake, right? Not to be rewarded, right? Not because they're being paid to use those products, but because they actually have an intrinsic self-motivated reason to use those products is going to take a little while, unfortunately. And I think we've delayed that process.
We've got a lot of maturing, I think, to do, and a lot of almost reset. We have to mentally reset to this new sort of frame of mind. Rick, I shared his comment here up on the screen. I contend it's also so much noise in this space. Those that are innovating are getting drowned out. So he's not saying that there's no real innovation happening. It's just there's so much noise that they go, they're overlooked. Really. Do you guys find that there is, Mark, I think maybe this goes back to the liquidity mining and the, what the airdrops and things, maybe that sort of noise. But do you guys find that it's been hard for, like, difficult for Pawchain or for Bancor or Carbon DeFi to show the, what it is that you guys are building because of what Rick is referring to as noise in the industry?
Yeah. From a marketing and growth standpoint, I do, and it's the noise can come from a lot of different places. Though it just happens to make a lot more noise. It just happens to echo more when there's a lot of it to bounce off of. You know what I mean? You can't compete with green candles. I don't care what you're doing, what you're building. It's hard to compete with green candles, and there's a lot of them in a lot of different places. So that's one of the things, and being real, launching out utilities, it's hard to get stuff going. Sometimes people don't know what they need until they need it, and that's just the thing. So, and like you spoke of earlier, people's learning paces are very different. We have a lot of newbies coming in; they don't realize that they need it, and you have a lot of people here that have been here for a while that don't necessarily understand the space or understand the tech behind it as well. So it's kind of who we're really talking to. It's kind of like you're looping back around and talking to yourself because you're the only one that understands, and maybe a few you picked up along the way that share the same synergies. But you're talking to yourself because you're the only one that sees the issue, the problem that you're solving. So and like I said, it's just there's no way around it. And green candles come from memes, they come from other utilities, but it's just depending on the parts of the cycle, there's a lot of different variables that goes behind that. So and it's really hard to compete with that. So being drowned out by the other excess noise, whatever, regardless of what noise it may be. Yes, and especially when there's 30,000 layer twos, it's kind of like, okay, well, you're trying to build something technically, you're building by technological standard, but every KOL, every Schiller, every tweeter is saying, oh, here's the next L2 breakthrough. It's innovative.
There's another issue that we can discuss too. I'm glad that you brought that up.
The oversaturation of buzzwords, basically, is what it is. Nobody builds by technological standard anymore. It hasn't been around for 2-3 years. It's been a complete, buzzword fest, and that's okay and that's cool. But it's also been people trying to build in a bear market. So people were building for various reasons, and it was basically like a lifeline people were holding on to. So as we focus the space back on technological standard, I do think it'll take a different shape, form, and fashion, hopefully, moving forward.
Yeah. Mark, do you want to add your take on this?
Yeah. The noise comes from a bunch of different places. There's community and like consumer noise, which I think can be the loudest and the most distracting. So in cryptocurrency, I think more than most other marketplaces, this idea of the narrative, capital letters, being the thing, like the driving force behind our entire industry, is really sort of sad, I think. It's and I understand where it comes from. That we've taken technological progress and cryptography theory and kind of rolled it all up in this culture, this human element, that so much so that these things are difficult to tease apart. And it's it's everywhere. Even Bitcoin struggles with this, even though it doesn't really have to generate any new products. This idea that like Bitcoin is deflationary and still posts like an inflation rate every year. Or this idea that Bitcoin is a store of value is also a narrative, or that it's digital gold or whatever. And the point is that none of these things are necessarily true or false. They're just things that we tell each other to keep people engaged. And in for Bitcoin, that's fine, because all you really need to do is find a reason for people to believe in the currency. But for stuff that's actually changing its infrastructure development, or for products that are being released or planned for release, these narratives can actually be very destructive, because they can confuse they can confuse people as to what the justification is. So, for example, I remember when Ethereum was struggling with what its scaling solutions were going to be, and there were two competing paradigms. One was to develop a completely sharded network, and then the other one was to have the layer 2 scaling solution, which is the one that ended up being adopted, partly because no one's really sure how to have a properly sharded network run well. And in order to get people excited about it, you then tell people that the L2s are going to save Ethereum, or that it's still somehow the same chain. Whereas, the reality is, and I think more today than when these things first rolled out, we kind of recognize that no, a layer 2 really is just another blockchain. Like from a developer perspective, it doesn't really matter if it's a layer 2 on top of Ethereum or a completely new layer 1. Like it can, in terms of deploying contracts and things, it feels exactly the same. And so let's say that once that gets saturated, what if they did actually figure out how to shard Ethereum? You then have sort of the L2 camp, right? The zealous followers of the layer 2 scaling paradigm are then going to be in conflict with the people that might prefer a sharded network and things like that. And there are so many examples of this kind of thing where because of the marketing hubris, we basically create religions, right, inside of cryptocurrency, where people become aligned with a certain narrative idea, and then financially invested in it. And so when a different paradigm emerges, even if it's a better one, people then have they have their own sense of community belonging, like they're part of their identity is now the old paradigm, and so it will make them sad to see it fade. But then they also have a financial incentive to make sure that the old paradigm doesn't fade. And so that creates another kind of noise. And this one, I think, is a lot more destructive. So this one is the one where, people might say, like remember the optimistic roll-up, paradigm when optimism and Arbitrum were competing. It was like, what is the best way to even have a layer 2? And for a while, that was the narrative, only to realize that actually these are two completely legitimate paradigms, and they can both coexist, and it will influence the way that those specific blockchain, those specific ecosystems develop here forward. But it's not like one of them is better than the other. It's like trying to argue with people about whether or not Ford is a better motor car manufacturer than Toyota or something. Like it can be that kind of level of ridiculous. And the brand loyalty that people feel towards things is it's not based in facts. This is how people feel about stuff. And yeah, it stops the industry from making better decisions, because they're often having to pander to an audience that they've previously taught the last solution would be the best, and everything after this is unnecessary. So again, I think we have only ourselves to blame.
Okay. Rick, thank you for your comment. And Sir Shows a lot. I see you commenting as well. So thank you for your comments also. I'm going to bring my screen back up. I think this has, something to do with what we were saying earlier about this. As long as it's more profitable to invest in infrastructure, this will not change. New chains means new airdrop opportunities. So a lot of speculation for tokens. So this kind of goes back to that, profit, the way that we've trained users and to look for airdrops, to look for points, to do the sort of liquidity mining and the yield farming and things of that sort. I think it kind of goes along with what you guys were saying earlier, in that regard.
Yeah,
Okay.
people aren't investing in a blockchain. They're investing in a token.
Yeah, maybe that's crypto's biggest problem. The
That
tokens.
And more so,
Tokens.
sometimes they don't even
know?
they don't even invest in a token. Sometimes they invest in the Twitter space, and they heard it in the group of people that are up there promoting it. Rather,
Yeah.
It's
they,
true.
They invest in those 3 accounts that they see as they see them as host, co-host, and co-host, and whoever's up there talking is who they're investing in for those 30 seconds. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I don't have a token, guys. So for all of our viewers here, no, for real though. Now that we're actually talking about that, like you mentioned the KOLs earlier, right? When Rick had made his comments about the noise. Do you think that this is a problem in crypto, that everything has, I mean, we're talking about the token right now, right? Like there's this, it's become monetized as well. And so I know my DMs are constantly, and I do the Bancor and the Carbon DeFi, we have an offer and it's this much money for this, and it's this much money for the followers, and it's this much money for the community. And we'll go out there and show your project, and it's this. And that's what we see, that you're not even sure that when someone does talk about the technology or does talk about this app, you're not even sure who is giving this sort of truthful, and I'm not saying that they're not truthful by any means, right? But maybe an unbiased sort of view on it, or review on it. What do you guys think about the KOLs and the content creators? And I'm a content creator, if I can even put myself in that category, right? Like here I am hosting our calls. So it's nothing against them, but there are so many with so many different angles, when you throw that financial incentive in, it starts to get blurry a little bit. Do you consider this a problem in crypto?
No, a content creator that's actually going to break it down and go in depth and educate and actually create content, all for it. 1,000%.
Let them get paid. Doesn't matter. Break it down.
Not a problem.
They're working.
You're paying for
right?
a service. You're paying for a service. Now, what I'm referring to is my difference between content creators and shillers are the ones who just say, "Hurry, go buy now. This is your time. Don't sleep on this project and put 3 rockets behind it."
The ones looking for the exit liquidity.
Right. You know what I mean? I need something more than that. Show me application. Break it down for me. Talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Sell it to me. Or I'm sorry, don't even sell it to me. Educate me. Don't sell it to me. Educate me. Educate me on this product, why it's applicable, what's it going to solve in my life. And I am 1,000% for that. The payment of it, yes, please pay them. That's what we need.
It is not hard. I mean, it is not easy, by the way, to really take the time to understand, especially when we're talking about innovation and a new technology. And if it is a project that is offering something that is different, has a different sort of value capture that users can benefit from, it is not easy to go in there and read through the documents and experiment with it yourself and really get hands-on, and then take all of that and break it down into a thread or a blog or something of the sort. It's not a simple task. It's not a quick sort of feat. So okay, I'm with you on that. Mark, what is your opinion? And 21, if you weren't done, I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
That was it.
Okay.
I think the title of key opinion leader is generally something that people bequeath onto themselves. Like what qualifies you as a key opinion leader? People like I've been pitched this stuff where people talk about themselves as if they're fucking Gore Vidal. you know, like they're, and they'll show you metrics like how many hundreds of thousands of followers they have on Twitter, or how many subscribers they have on whatever social media network that, you know, they happen to be popular on. But your, you know, that title of opinion leader means that your opinions have to actually be good, you know. And most of the time, I think that we're maybe misusing that title. I think I would prefer something like actually influencer isn't necessarily a bad title, but you know, people who are, you know, spruikers or something, you know, these are basically you know, the celebrities of DeFi and cryptocurrency, in the sense that people know who they are, or that they have some sort of recognition. But it doesn't mean that you know, that their pull is that people value their opinion. You know, I think that that's something that's reserved for like very few people. In my mind, the key opinion leaders in cryptocurrency are people like, you know, people like Vitalik Buterin, people like, you know, Eric Voorhees, you know, there are, you know, Martin Kopelman from Gnosis. You know, there are people that say really interesting things, and that and that there's a good reason to consider the things that they say. For me, that's an opinion leader. Someone who says, don't sleep on such and such, or uses the word based, or, you know, uses acronyms like LMFAO or LOL in their Twitter all the time, or, you know, says GMGM all the time. Like, these aren't opinion leaders. These are cultists. You know, these are you know, people that are definitely fully entrenched in the like cryptocurrency and blockchain culture of things, and they might command, you know, the attention of a lot of people. But I don't think any of those followers really care about what these people say. I think that that's my perspective on KOLs. I think that ultimately they're useless.
Harsh. Okay.
Sure.
Well, I said, look, no filter on this call, right? So, we are at the top of the hour, you guys. That conversation actually went by really quickly. It was great to have both of you back. Mark, I know that you have to, do you have to jump? I don't know if you do. If you want to give us a quick rundown on Carbon DeFi or on Bancor before you do 21, do you have a minute to stick around? I always like to give you guys an opportunity to actually talk about your own projects as well, you know. Mark, you want to start us off this time around?
Yes, certainly. So yeah, as I said earlier on in our conversation, you know, I consider Bancor to be an infrastructure project. And so we develop smart contracts to facilitate decentralized exchange. These are you know, permissionless and open source, in the sense that people can interrogate. These are verified contracts. So we don't make secret how those functions work, or you know, the implementation decisions made there. Carbon DeFi is the most recent in like a long line of of decentralized exchange infrastructure projects from Bancor. You know, that journey began with the constant product automated market paradigm, and then moved into the concentrated liquidity, or as we called it then, amplified liquidity paradigm back in 2020. And then Carbon is the what we're calling the asymmetric liquidity paradigm. And so what this allows you to do is to interact with the smart contracts much the same way that you would interact with an order book on Binance or Coinbase or OKX or whatever. And what I mean by that is that you can place orders. So, you know, these are the amount of units that I'm willing to sell at specific price points. That can be bidding or asking. But then, unlike OKX and Binance, the way that our order books work is that you can distribute your the units that you have for sale over price ranges. And so this means, rather than having to choose a single price point to buy or sell at, you can select a price range. And this recreate some of the day trader behavior that we see, where people will create like a laddered range of sells and buys, because they don't have perfect confidence in choosing a specific price point. To borrow from the wisdom of Ben Cohen, who is, I think, one of the most sober voices in cryptocurrency and price analysis, says that the first thing you have to know about trading well is that you're always going to miss the bottom and you're always going to miss the top. And so it's really about finding a range that you think is going to be the local high, or a range that you think is going to be the local low, and then spread your transactions out over that range. And that is effectively what Carbon DeFi allows you to do, but in a recurring manner, meaning that as my asking prices are being taken, then the money that I get when I'm selling those tokens immediately becomes a part of my bidding range, and vice versa. And so this enables effectively a grid trading like strategy to be composed, and in a way that is has a very, very minimal memory footprint on the smart contracts, and so is extremely gas efficient, and is free from third-party dependencies. So it doesn't need oracles. We don't use hooks. It's a completely self-contained system, and I'm very proud of what we've built.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. I did share the links to the Carbon DeFi X account and to your account as well. So guys, give Mark and Carbon DeFi a follow. I'm going to share yours also, 21. But first, tell us about Pawchain while I do.
Sure. We are a blockchain solutions company, registered LLC, and what we do is we focus on interoperability, and we like to give project founders the ability to be able to have their assets, regardless if this is tokens, if you're building a DApp, a game, if you have an NFT collection. What you'll do is simply, sorry, apologies. What you'll do is simply deploy a single liquidity pool on the world's fastest blockchain. So we did away with traditional bridging and third-party intermediaries, and we just built a custom blockchain from the ground up. All of our all of our code is proprietary and custom made from the ground up. No copy and pasta insight, not a nowhere near. So I'm a big fan of that. We actually built a custom language that takes a little bit from Golang, Rust, Solidity, and Java, and it's called Paw.js. So whenever you build on Pawchain, you will use a custom coded language from the ground up that is so easy to use. You can actually build on Pawchain with a Windows operating system. Very cool. Very cool. Very digestible for the new people that want to come in and want to build. So that's also a benefit. So for project founders, you can deploy a single liquidity pool. A big problem with the crypto space is fragmented liquidity, fragmented chains, fragmented communities, fragmented people. And it's hurt us. You see how far we've gotten working this way in the past, and here we are now. So let's try something new. Let's unfragment it and work together. So you have your single liquidity pool, you deploy it on the world's fastest blockchain, and now your asset can be traded freely across Base, Arbitrum, Ethereum, Avalanche, CeeLo, Pawchain. Let me get my cheat sheet out. Polygon, Arbitrum, BNB, AVAX, Optimism, Solana, Genosis. What else we got? Linea. We got. I'm sorry, we're at about 13 plus chains now.
I'm going to know them by the end of this. Right? You know that, right?
But one of the most important is the SVM. So being able to have a single liquidity pool, but have users on an EVM chain as long as an SVM chain as well, without having to do a bridge, pretty revolutionary. So no more fragmented liquidity. You mint your NFT collection on one chain, and you're going to have holders on all chains. The most bullish part, my favorite part, when it comes to games, building with no ceilings, something that is absolutely new to this space and game development as a whole. So this is the type of interoperability we're talking for. dApps, being able to be on every chain, users on every chain simultaneously. No more one at a time. The user has to disconnect or turn and burn. You're good to go. So it's really cool. We are infinitely scalable. We stood by that so much that we built the users a gas-free wallet. We do not have gas fees on Pawchain. When you're on Pawchain, you will not pay a dime in gas, and that's just that we stand by our infinitely scalable claim that much. I think Solana gave you Solana gave you about 50,000 transactions per second. We hit the ground running at about 80,000 without even a full validation node, without even a full validator load. So we are definitely infinitely scalable, and for good reason being, by the end of this year, we'd like to connect to every blockchain on the face of the earth. And when I say connect, we are connecting an actual blockchain to these blockchains. There's no bridges, there's no nothing. So now instead of
By the
having
end
to
of
do,
this year, did you
yes,
say?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You guys are
That's
busy.
well, we've got a lot of the EVMs out of the way. We've got the main ones going. EVM is really easy when you're building the custom connection. It's the SUIs, the Trons, the Solanas that really kind of kind of give you a little bit of a rustle. We have a Paul Wallet, a mobile app coming out very soon. We're also going to have
Nice.
validations to go live. We have things like lockers for passive income for people who would like to delegate but don't really know how and don't want to be a validator. Simply lock up your percentage and just receive your passive income. There's a lot of cool things about this project. The gas-free wallet lets users an external swap. You don't even have to enter our ecosystem to take advantage of the multi-chain technology. Simply connect with your MetaMask, your Trust Wallet, your Phantom, and you can go
You
cross-chain,
guys both have a lot going on,
cross-chain
right?
instantly, and it's really cool. It's applicable, it's useful, and we talked about user interface. Now I've talked a lot of technical stuff, but when you sit down in front of this Paul Wallet app or this user interface on a computer, you're simply going to select the chain you want to be on, select the crypto you want, do one transaction, and you are now a cross chain. And that's where we did away with the four transactions average that you would have to do all the swaps and bridging. That doesn't exist because we're running it off of L3, and it lets smart
Amazing.
contracts interact directly with smart contracts. No more middlemen, no more nodes, none of that's in between. So that's kind of how we work, and that's just how we connected a blockchain to another blockchain. So it's really cool. And that's what we do. We build solutions for founders and for project users. We have L1 protocols integrated. We've got L2s, RWA marketplaces. We've got meme coins deployed. We just recently hit our 40 plus mark for projects deployed. We're CertiK audited.
Awesome.
We've got Skynet watching us 24 hours a day, 365. We are KYC. We are
It's nice
everything.
both of you guys mentioned the security as
Yes,
well. I mean, we had
yes,
talked about scams and things or like whatever it was, but
and I
it's
don't,
nice. Like
I
Mark,
don't
I
want
heard you mention that there were no third-party dependencies. This was all built in, and now 21,
right.
you're talking about the security as well. You
It's
can
it's
tell you guys are builders,
it's really cool to
right?
build for the founders and be able to offer solutions to be able to get people focused back on building. Web3 was
Yeah,
all about putting the power back in the hands of the people, but then you had things like VCs come up and you have to do pre-sales, and that's just crazy. These people aren't
yeah,
focused on building, they're focused on the money. So we wanted to kind of give the space back to people that wanted to focus on building can actually do that and make it a little easier for them and make it cheaper,
nice.
safer, and faster.
Awesome. Well, you guys are both fantastic. I have
Thank you.
shared the Pawchain X account and
Thank
your
you.
personal as well. So everybody give 21 a follow also. We will see you, Mark. I know you have another call in like an hour. 21, you're always on different spaces and things. So everybody
I'm
keep an
about
eye on
to.
both of those accounts. I'm sure you'll see more of them. And I will see you all next Tuesday on our trading call where we do the live market analysis and take a look at the Bitcoin liquidity and see what's in store for us. So if not before Tuesday, I'll see you guys all then. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you to our audience. We'll see you
Thank you.
guys soon.
Thank you so much. Good to
You
see you,
too.
Mark. Have a good day, Jen.
Good to see
Thank
you
you,
too.
everybody.
You too. Thanks so much. See you guys.